ABC News has taken a significant step this morning in acknowledging that it mishandled an exclusive report on the administration's Benghazi talking points. The media's interest in Benghazi surged after ABC's Jonathan Karl reported new details on how top officials repeatedly changed those talking points after the fatal attack.
I have obtained 12 different versions of those talking points that shows that they were dramatically edited by the administration. Take a look at two of them. On the left, a draft initially written by the CIA. On the right, one that was used by the White House, the final version. What was taken out? All references to al-Qaeda.
But as CNN's Jake Tapper was the first to report, that story had a significant inaccuracy that did not match the actual emails involving those talking points.
Previous reports suggested that Ben Rhodes from the White House said in an email that he wanted to make sure that the State Department's concerns were reflected in the talking points. But we obtained an actual copy of Ben Rhodes' email, and he doesn't mention the State Department.
I spoke earlier this morning with Jon Karl, ABC's chief White House correspondent, and Jon Karl gave me the following statement. Clearly, I regret the email was quoted incorrectly, and I regret that it's become a distraction from the story, which still entirely stands. I should have been clearer about the attribution. We updated our story immediately after new information became available. Joining us now here in Washington, Jennifer Rubin, who writes the Right Turn blog for the Washington Post and is a contributor to CNBC's The Kudlow Report. In New York, David Shuster, host of the online news site Take Action News. And again, here in Washington, Jane Hall of American University. Jennifer Rubin, Jon Karl said, as we heard, that he obtained those emails. What he got was a summary that was inaccurate in part from a congressional source, presumably a Republican. Should ABC now retract that part of the story?
Well, I think he has apologized for that part, but he shouldn't retract the story in toto. And in fact, it was an important piece of reporting that was in front of the story. I think what he did was exactly right. If you've made one mistake within the context of good reporting, you apologize for that. ABC was not the only one who made this error, by the way. The Weekly Standard, a conservative publication, did as well. I'm not aware that they've apologized in any shape or form. What the bias, and people may be asking about this, what difference does it make, to quote a
Why
vague
don't we
phrase?
get to what difference does it make after I get some other voices in? David Shuster, Jon Karl is a terrific reporter who has a long record of solid journalism. And in this case, most of what he reported was accurate, but it was not accurate in a significant degree when it came to White House official Ben Rhodes. So he was, it appears, misled by his source.
Well, he was misled, and I don't know how you can stand by a story if the story is wrong. I mean, Jonathan Karl made a couple of mistakes. First, yes, he was wrong in the attribution. He could have put this email out and said, I've been debriefed on the email from a Republican congressional source, and here's what they tell me. Instead, ABC News said that they had obtained emails, and Jonathan Karl made it seem as if he had read them directly. So the story was wrong, the attribution was wrong, and he's still not characterizing the source as a Republican source, even though other news organizations are already doing that. So I just think that the problems continue for ABC News in all of this.
Right. Now, I should point out that this part involving Ben Rhodes, White House official, and not to get too down in the weeds here, but it has to do with whether or not Ben Rhodes said the State Department's interests needed to be protected as they hashed out what they were going to say about the fatal attack in Libya. He didn't actually use the phrase State Department, he used the word equities, which could be seen as an indirect reference to various agencies involved. But that was not on the air on ABC News. It was in the 16th paragraph of an online story. So those who are defending ABC are saying, well, yes, he made a minor error, and yet he's being trashed, perhaps in part for political reasons, as if the whole story was wrong. Karl went back to his source, who said, well, Ben Rhodes was clearly talking about the State Department. So my question to you is, the view within ABC, Jane Hall, seems to be, well, we updated the story and that was the correction, but it didn't have a word correction or retraction or apologize. Is that good enough?
I don't think it's quite good enough, because that error, he put in direct quotes. They put in direct quotes. The way it looked as if it was direct quotes. They said they had obtained them. Diane Sawyer hyped the story, you know, promoted the story. We obtained this exclusive. It led to a whole other wave of a whole lot of other stories about the talking points. People are running with this and saying they manipulated it. If it's not true, then I think they need to do more than say, part of it's not true.
But part of it isn't true, and part of it is true. What the difference that this makes is that it made it seem that the State Department was the prime mover in these edits, which is not the case. but the sequence of events, the number of edits, the changes that were made were all accurate. And no one else in the mainstream media was reporting
But that's the thing about journalism is that, and, you know, when other people, including myself, have made mistakes, you know, you have to kind of take your lumps.
Right.
95% of your facts could be correct. If a significant fact is wrong, and you just update it, you don't say it was wrong. I mean, if ABC had put this out earlier, and I'm glad that John Carl now says he regrets the email was quoted incorrectly and he regrets that the attribution was not clearer, but if ABC had done that 3 days ago, I don't think it would have mushroomed to this extent.
But I don't think it's accurate, as David said, that the story was wrong. The story was not wrong. The attribution of the story was...
Jennifer, let's step back. Let's step back, because the overall Republican point here was that the Obama administration was trying to protect the State Department, the Obama administration was trying to protect the State Department, and that the White House was somehow trying to characterize the talking points or change the talking points in order to minimize political damage. That Republican idea is just flat out wrong. This turns out to be a boring set of emails where simply CIA and State Department officials were trying to...
You had your speech on behalf of the administration.
David, Jennifer.
It's very nice to have the Media Matters talking points recited out of David's
What are you
lips.
talking
about?
That is the medium. What are you talking about, Jane?
Howard, if you want to hear me, that's fine. If you don't, you should mute
everybody from Media Matters today.
Let's assume that everybody is giving their own views. You may disagree with them.
No, they're actually on Media Matters. These exact comments are coming out of Media Matters. Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I don't talk to Media Matters, so Jennifer, that's an unfair accusation for you to make. But the bottom line is the Republican argument in all of this is flat out wrong.
If you want to mute
Jennifer, one person at a time. On the one hand, David, you have said that these are boring emails and they're not that significant. On the other hand, you said earlier, and I think there's a point of consensus here, it is that this was a mistake that should have been owned up to, and your point is, Jennifer Rubin?
Exactly. He did what was correct. I don't think making the story about Jonathan Karl is really the point here. There's a major story that the mainstream media did not carry. His essential point that these talking points went through major revisions to remove information so as to not present the American people with the accurate story is correct. I don't have any problem with him apologizing now, whether he apologized now or a few days ago. But the central point should not be lost, that there are definitely people who are spinning for the media who are trying to discredit the entire report, and that's just not accurate.
But let's be fair.
Let me...
One of these emails, the whole point of the emails was that the White House simply didn't want Congress to get out in front.
David, you've made that point. I want to move on. Jane, I have a journalism question for you.
Okay.
If a confidential source who shares with you, and this obviously was a congressional source, sharing with you written summaries, handwritten summaries, of confidential emails, which were later put up by the White House, so we now know what was said. If that person is inaccurate, if that person lies, is your confidentiality agreement that source dissipated, and do you have some responsibility to come forth and say, I was misled and here's who did it?
I think you do have some responsibility, and I will say, you know, that I think I agree with Rachel Maddow on this one, and I don't always agree with her, but I think if a source burns you, you need to come forward, and you are not under obligation to continue to protect a source who clearly leaked something for a political reason.
Well, wait a second. That's not how any journalist in this town works. We get burned a lot, and sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not intentional. I don't feel that...
It was a political summary.
Yes.
It was a political summary that
you can
stated
do that,
the facts.
but I'm sorry. If you've given confidentiality to a source, it is not vitiated because that person has misled you in some respect. I do not. No, it is not.
There have been times when journalists have said, look, I was lied to, and now I'm going to... Because now there's a whole question. Remember now, White House spokesman Jay Carney has accused Republicans, we don't know who the source of this was, of fabricating that Ben Rhodes email. And ABC News knows who it is and is not able to say under that confidentiality agreement. I'll give you the last word, David Shuster.
Well, they can still at least characterize it. And again, ABC has not even gone as far as CBS News in characterizing this as coming from Republicans. ABC has an opportunity and a responsibility to say, look, we got this from Republicans on Capitol Hill, and you can make your own judgment about what they were trying to do. But to hold that back, I think does ABC News no honor in any of this.
All right. Up next, the press pounces on that IRS scandal. Are journalists getting more